My younger sister, Mia, has been using the same excuse since she turned 21. She claims she can't have her one true love, so she's entitled to destroy everyone else's. I don't mean this in the cute, she's still hung up on her ex kind of way. I mean it like, if you're happy, she'll find a way to make you miserable and then blame it on her tragic love story. Her one true love was some guy named Ethan, whom she met at a college party 4 years ago. They hooked up once, he never called, and somehow, that became her origin story for being a piece of work. It started with her best friend since kindergarten, Jess. One weekend, Mia stayed over at Jess's place, and by Monday, Jess's boyfriend was sending Mia good morning texts. When Jess found them together in her own bed, Mia actually said, "You don't understand what it's like to lose your soulmate." Jess never spoke to her again. Then came our cousin's engagement party. Mia showed up in a dress that cost more than my rent, got wine drunk, and cornered the groom in the bathroom. His exact words later were, "She kept saying I reminded her of someone special." Thank God he pushed her off and told his fiancé immediately. But Mia cried to our parents about how seeing happy couples triggered her trauma. Mom bought her a spa weekend to help her heal. By the time I met Ryan, I knew the drill. I kept him away from family dinners, deleted Mia from my social media, and told him my sister was going through something and needed space. For 2 years, it worked. We got engaged last spring, planning a small ceremony with just us and close friends. I made one mistake, though. I mentioned it at Mom's birthday dinner. Mia's eyes lit up like Christmas came early. "I'm so happy for you," she said while hugging me. "When do I get to meet him?" A week later, Ryan showed me his phone, laughing. "Your sister found me on Instagram with some fake account. Look at these messages." We read them together, mocking her desperation, and he promised to block her. Well, 3 weeks before my wedding, I had the flu, badly. Ryan was supposed to be at his brother's golf tournament for the day, but my friend, who lived near Mia's apartment complex, texted me to come over since I was already at my sister's. What? She said she'd seen Ryan's Tesla in the visitor spot. My chest went cold. I drove over, fever and all, and used the spare key Mia had given me for emergencies. I found them on her couch, her head in his lap, his hand in her hair, both half-dressed. She looked up at me with those fake tears already forming. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "He just reminds me so much of Ethan." I stormed out. Ryan didn't even try to save what we had. That's when I decided she'd learn what losing really feels like. See, Ethan wasn't some mystery man who just vanished. We'd actually been following each other on Instagram for 3 years. We had mutual friends from college and exchanged the occasional like on each other's posts, but we never really talked. He lived 3 hours away, worked as a physical therapist, and posted videos of his golden retriever. So, I slid into his DMs with a simple message, "Hey, this is weird, but my sister had a thing for you in college and just ruined my wedding. Want to help me ruin her life?" He responded in 12 minutes. "Mia? The girl who showed up at my mom's house? I'm in." Turns out, she'd driven to his hometown and introduced herself to his family as the love of her life. Marcus Chen, 31 years old, was a successful architect with that kind of quiet charm that made women melt just from looking at him. His black hair was always perfectly tousled, his dark eyes seemed to hold secrets, and his smile, I admit, even hating to admit it, made me pause my Instagram scroll longer than appropriate. The first time I saw Marcus in person was at my father's 60th birthday party, 2 weeks after my official separation from Ryan. I was still wearing sunglasses inside to hide the dark circles and always arriving late to avoid questions about my love life. When I entered my parents' house, I found him in the kitchen, helping my mother with the dishes, laughing at some joke she'd told. "Ah, this must be the famous older sister," he said when Mia introduced me, extending his hand with a genuine smile. "Mia talks about you a lot." "I'm sure she does," I thought, shaking his hand and noticing how firm and warm it was. "I hope it's good things always," he replied. But there was something in his tone that made me think he knew exactly what kind of person Mia was. During dinner, I watched how he interacted with my family, respectful with my parents, genuinely interested in my father's work stories, patient when my mother bombarded him with questions about his future plans. With Mia, he was attentive but in an almost careful way, as if he was constantly evaluating her mood. "Marcus designed that new building downtown," Mia said at some point, leaning against him possessively. I immediately recognized the one with those beautiful hanging gardens. "It was a team project," he corrected gently. "I only did part of the landscaping." "Don't be modest," she insisted, kissing his cheek in a way that seemed more performance than affection. "He's brilliant, absolutely brilliant." Marcus was slightly embarrassed by the exaggerated praise but smiled politely. It was at that moment I noticed something: he wasn't completely devoted to her. There was a reserve there, a subtle wall that Mia clearly didn't notice but was obvious to anyone who knew how to observe. After dinner, when my parents were showing old photos to Marcus in the living room, I got a moment alone with Mia in the kitchen. "He seems nice," I commented, drying the dishes she was washing. "Isn't he?" she sighed dreamily. "He's so different from all the other guys I've dated, more mature, more stable, richer." I translated mentally, noticing the Rolex on his wrist and the German car in the driveway. "How did you meet?" "At the law firm where I work. He was there for a meeting about a project." I was taking documents to my boss, and it just happened. She paused, washing the dishes with a dreamy smile. It was like in the movies, you know? Our eyes met across the room, and that was it. And he asked you out right away? Not exactly, she admitted, and I could see a shadow pass over her face. He was polite but kind of distant. It took 3 casual encounters in the building lobby until I managed to get him to ask me for coffee. Casual encounters. Translation, she stopped him until he gave in out of politeness. But now you've been together how long? 2 months, she said, her voice carrying that dreamy quality I recognized well. It was the same tone she used when talking about Ethan, about our cousin's fiancé, about Ryan. And I can feel that it's different this time. He's the one, you know, the one. My stomach contracted. There it was again, Mia's narrative about finding the one. The same story she told whenever she fixated on someone. And it always ended the same way, with another person hurt and Mia finding an excuse to justify her behavior. That's great, Mia, I lied, forcing a smile. You seem happy together. We are, she said with conviction. Sometimes he gets kind of distant, you know, like he's thinking about something else. But I know it's just because he's used to being independent. Men like Marcus don't open up easily. Or maybe he's just not as invested as you are, I thought, but kept the observation to myself. When we returned to the living room, I found Marcus looking at a photo of me from my college graduation. Did you study architecture too? He asked. Graphic design, I replied. But I've always been interested in architecture, mainly urban sustainability. His eyes lit up. Really? It's a fascinating field. Are you familiar with Jark Ingles' work? Via 57 West is one of my favorite projects. I nodded, and we spent the next 20 minutes discussing green architecture and urban design, a conversation that flowed naturally and effortlessly. Mia tried to join in a few times, but it was obvious she didn't have enough knowledge to contribute significantly. We should continue this conversation sometime, Marcus said when they were leaving. It's rare to find someone who truly understands the importance of sustainable design. Sure, I replied, ignoring Mia's look. That would be interesting. That night, when I got home, I couldn't get Marcus out of my head, not in a romantic way, at least not consciously. But there was something about him that intrigued me. Maybe it was the fact that he seemed to be genuinely a good person in a complicated situation. Or maybe it was the way he had treated me like an interesting person, not just Mia's sister. Or maybe it was the fact that, for the first time since Ryan, I had felt a real connection with someone. During the following weeks, Marcus appeared at every family event, Sunday barbecue at my parents' house, my aunt's birthday, even our cousin's son's baptism. At each occasion, Mia became more possessive, more dramatic, more desperate to keep his attention focused on her. Marcus, you need to try the cake I made, she would say, even if he was still eating. Marcus, do you remember that funny story I told you about work? She would insist, even if he was clearly interested in talking to someone else. Marcus, let's go. You said we had plans, she would lie when she saw he was having fun without needing her constant attention. And Marcus, he was too polite to say anything, but I could see the frustration growing in his eyes, the way his jaw tensed when she interrupted him, how he would pause before responding when she asked an obvious question about something they'd already discussed, how he would look around for an escape route when she started one of her dramatic work stories. It was at my uncle's barbecue that everything started to change. Mia was telling a group about how she had saved an important case at the office. Translation, she had photocopied documents that someone else had prepared, when Marcus quietly stepped away from the group and came to sit next to me on the porch. Nice place to escape from crowds, he commented, looking at my uncle's garden. It's been my favorite refuge since childhood, I replied. When family gatherings got too intense. He laughed. I imagine you have many stories. More than I'd like, I admitted. Large families have their advantages and disadvantages. And having a sister like Mia, that must be interesting. There was something in the way he said this that made me look at him more carefully. Interesting is one word. She's very intense, he said carefully. Passionate about everything she does. That's a diplomatic way to put it. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the children playing in the garden. Can I ask you something? He said finally. Sure. What happened with your engagement? Mia mentioned you were engaged, but... My stomach contracted. It didn't work out. Sorry, I shouldn't have asked. No, it's okay. I took a deep breath. Actually, it was Mia who ended the engagement. Marcus looked at me with a confused expression. What do you mean? She slept with my fiancé 3 weeks before the wedding. The silence that followed was so long I started to regret having told him. Finally, Marcus spoke. Jesus Christ. She said she was going through a difficult time, that he reminded her of someone special she had lost, that it wasn't intentional. And you forgave her? Not exactly. I looked at him. Why? Does that change your opinion of her? He was quiet for a long time, looking at his own hands. It explains some things, he said finally. What kind of things? The way she clings, like she's always afraid I'm going to leave, he paused. And the way she talks about you, like you're competitors instead of sisters. We are, I said simply. At least in her head. When we went back inside, Mia immediately noticed we had been talking alone. For the rest of the afternoon, she didn't leave his side, creating excuses to touch his arm, kiss his cheek, mark territory in every way possible. But something had changed. I could feel Marcus watching me during the rest of the party. And when our eyes met, there was a new understanding there, as if he finally understood there were more layers to this family than Mia had let on. That night, when I got home, I found a friend request on Instagram. Marcus Chan wanted to follow me. I accepted. 2 hours later, I received a direct message, "Thank you for the conversation today." It was enlightening. "I'd like to continue our discussion about sustainable architecture sometime. How about coffee this week?" I stared at the message for 15 minutes before responding, "Sure, that would be great." And that's how it all began. Chapter 2. The coffee happened on a Tuesday afternoon at a small cafe downtown that Marcus had suggested. It was one of those hidden places that only locals knew, with exposed brick walls, hanging plants, and the best cappuccino I had ever tasted. We arrived practically at the same time, me coming from my office and him from a client meeting. "This place is amazing," I commented, looking around. "How did you discover it?" "I work in the building next door," he explained, taking off his jacket and hanging it on the back of the chair. "I come here whenever I need a quiet place to think." We ordered our coffees and, for almost 2 hours, talked about everything except Mia, architecture, sustainability, our jobs, places we wanted to visit, books we had read recently. The conversation flowed so naturally that I completely forgot I was technically going out with my sister's boyfriend. Marcus was intelligent in a way that didn't need to prove itself. He asked genuine questions, really listened to the answers, and built on ideas instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. It was refreshing after months of dealing with lawyers and clients who talked more than they listened. "Have you ever thought about going back to school?" he asked when I mentioned my old interest in urban landscaping. "There are some excellent graduate programs that combine graphic design with urban planning." "I've thought about it," I admitted. "But with everything that's happened recently, I don't know if it's the right time for big changes." "Sometimes big changes are exactly what we need," he said gently, "especially after unplanned changes." There was something in the way he said this that made me think he wasn't just talking about my situation. "Are you speaking from personal experience?" He smiled, but it was a melancholic smile. "Let's say the last year has been educational." "In what sense?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, turning the cup between his hands. "Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you know you should leave, but don't know how?" My heart started beating faster. "Are you talking about work?" "Not exactly." The silence that followed was loaded with implications. I knew I should change the subject, that we were entering dangerous territory. Instead, I heard myself asking, "What's stopping you from leaving?" "Guilt, mainly," he sighed. "When someone invests so much in you emotionally and physically, it's hard to just give up, even when you know it's not sustainable long term, even when you don't feel the same." Our eyes met across the table, and for a moment, the whole world seemed to stop. "Especially when you don't feel the same," he said quietly. It was at that moment I should have gotten up and left, should have said it wasn't appropriate to discuss his relationship with my sister, should have remembered all the pain Mia had caused and decided to be the better person. Instead, I reached out and touched his hand across the table. "That must be difficult," I said. Marcus looked at our joined hands and didn't pull away. "More difficult recently." "Why?" "Because I met someone who reminded me what it's like when a conversation doesn't feel like work." My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Marcus, I know," he said quickly. "I know it's complicated. I know it's wrong, but I can't stop thinking about you since that barbecue." I pulled my hand back, suddenly conscious of where we were and what we were doing. "We can't." "I know," he repeated. "But that doesn't change the fact that what? That you're the first person in months who makes me want to be a better version of myself." We sat in silence for several minutes, both lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Marcus signaled to the waiter and paid our bill. "I should go," he said, standing up. "Marcus, wait." He stopped and looked at me. "Mia is my sister," I said, though the words seemed inadequate. "No matter how complicated our relationship is, she's still your sister," he finished. "I understand." "Do you understand?" "I understand that you're loyal, even when the person doesn't deserve your loyalty." He picked up his jacket. "It's one of the things I admire about you." After he left, I sat in the cafe for another half hour, stirring what remained of my coffee and trying to process what had just happened. Technically, we hadn't done anything wrong, we had just talked. But there was so much subtext in that conversation that I felt like I had betrayed Mia somehow, which was ridiculous considering what she had done to me. That night, I received a text message from Mia. "Marcus said you guys had coffee today. How cool that you're getting along." He seemed much more animated when he got home. I responded with something neutral about how it had been nice to talk about architecture, but her words stuck in my head. He had seemed animated. What did that mean? During the next few days, I tried to keep my distance. I didn't respond to Marcus's messages on Instagram, avoided family events where I knew he would be, and forced myself to focus on work. But he had planted a seed in my head, not just about him, but about Mia. For years, I had accepted that Mia was simply intense or passionate. But the conversation with Marcus made me realize something I had been denying: Mia wasn't just intense. She was manipulative, calculating, and destructive. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to do to her exactly what she always did to me. The opportunity came 2 weeks later at our parents' wedding anniversary. It was a small party, just close family and a few intimate friends, but my mother had asked everyone to dress up for photos. I chose my dress carefully, a navy blue midi dress that enhanced my silhouette without being too obvious. I made sure to arrive a little late, when I knew everyone would already be there, and attention wouldn't be focused on my entrance. Marcus was in the kitchen, helping my father with drinks, when I arrived. He wore a light blue shirt that made his eyes look even darker. When he saw me, he smiled in a way that made my stomach flip. "You look beautiful," he said quietly when I passed by him to greet my father. "Thank you," I replied, letting my hand brush against his when I took a glass of water. During dinner, I sat strategically across from Marcus, 2 chairs to the left, close enough to participate in conversations with him, far enough not to seem obvious. Mia was next to him, of course, monopolizing his attention whenever possible. "Marcus, tell everyone about the new project," she said at some point, putting her hand on his arm possessively. "It's not that interesting," he said, clearly embarrassed by the attention. "Of course it is. He's designing a sustainable housing complex," she continued, ignoring his discomfort. "For low-income families. Isn't it incredible?" "It sounds fascinating," I said, looking directly at Marcus. "Are you using integrated solar panels or a geothermal system?" His eyes lit up. "Actually, we're combining both. The challenge is making everything economically viable without sacrificing energy efficiency." "And what about landscaping? Are you incorporating urban agriculture or just aesthetics?" "Urban agriculture," he replied enthusiastically. "Community gardens on the roof, collective composting, even a small orchard." "That's brilliant," I said, leaning forward with interest. "It must be incredibly complex to coordinate all these systems." We spent the next 20 minutes discussing the technical details of the project. Mia tried to contribute a few times, but it was obvious she didn't understand even the basic concepts. Eventually, she gave up and fell silent, picking at her food with an increasingly irritated expression. After dinner, when everyone moved to the living room for coffee and dessert, I managed a moment alone with Marcus on the porch. "Sorry if I monopolized the conversation in there," I said. "It's just that your project sounds really revolutionary." "Don't apologize," he said, moving a little closer. "It's refreshing to talk to someone who really understands what I'm trying to do." "Mia isn't interested in your work?" Marcus hesitated. "She's interested in the idea of my work, in how it sounds when she tells other people about it, but the real details, the process, the challenges." He shook his head. "It's not her fault. Not everyone needs to be passionate about sustainable architecture." "But it must be lonely," I said gently, not having anyone to share that passion with. "It is," he admitted. "Very lonely." We stood in silence for a moment, looking at the garden illuminated by the streetlights. "Marcus," I began, but he interrupted me. "I broke up with her," he said abruptly. My heart stopped. "What?" "Last night. I broke up with Mia." "Why?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "Because it's not fair to continue with someone when you're thinking about another person." We looked at each other for a long moment. Then, slowly, Marcus approached. "Can I kiss you?" he asked quietly. Instead of answering, I moved closer and kissed him first. It was at that exact moment that Mia opened the porch door. Her scream echoed throughout the house. Chapter 3. Mia's scream was so loud and shrill it made the neighborhood dogs start barking. Marcus and I separated immediately, but it was too late, she had seen us. "What are you doing?" she screamed, her voice barely sounding human. Within seconds, the entire family was on the porch: my parents, my uncles, cousins, even my 85-year-old grandmother, who normally stayed in the living room armchair. Everyone was looking at the three of us like it was a reality show episode that had gotten out of control. "Mia, calm down," my mother said, approaching her carefully. "What happened?" "She kissed my boyfriend." Mia screamed, pointing at me with a trembling finger. "My own sister kissed my boyfriend." "Ex-boyfriend," Marcus corrected quietly, which was definitely the wrong thing to say at that moment. Mia turned to him with a fury I had never seen before. "Ex? Since when?" "Since last night," he said, finding the courage to speak louder. "I tried to explain to you, but you didn't want to listen." "You didn't break up with me," she screamed. "You said you needed time." "That's not breaking up." The awkward silence that followed was broken by my mother's voice. "Maybe it would be better to discuss this inside the house," she suggested diplomatically. "No," Mia shouted. "I want everyone to hear. I want everyone to know what kind of person my sister really is." She turned to me, tears streaming down her face but with a rage in her eyes that made me step back. "You can't stand to see me happy, can you? First, you sabotaged my friendship with Jessica, then I sabotaged your friendship with Jessica?" I interrupted, finally finding my voice. "Mia, you slept with her boyfriend. That was different." "How was it different?" I was going through a hard time. And now I'm going through a hard time too, I said, my own voice starting to rise. Or did you forget that you destroyed my wedding 3 months ago? A murmur passed through the assembled family. Some of my uncles and cousins didn't know the details of what had happened with Ryan. It's not the same thing, Mia said, but her voice was no longer as confident. Why not? I asked, taking a step toward her. Why is it that when you ruin other people's lives, it's because you're going through a hard time, but when it happens to you, it's because the other person is bad? Because I never did it for revenge, she screamed. You did this on purpose. You seduced Marcus to hurt me. Maybe, I admitted, and I saw shock on the entire family's faces. But you know what, Mia? Even if I had planned this, it still wouldn't come close to everything you've done to me over the years. What have I done? She asked, feigning innocence. Really? Do you really want to have this conversation here in front of everyone? Yes, I do. Fine. I took a deep breath and turned to our assembled family. Do you want to know what kind of person Mia really is? I'll tell you. No, my mother said quickly. Girls, this isn't appropriate. It is appropriate, I said firmly, because you've spent years turning a blind eye to her behavior, and now you're treating me like I'm the villain in this story. I looked around at all the curious and embarrassed faces of my family. When I was 16 and dating Jake Morrison, Mia accidentally told him that I had hooked up with his best friend at a party. It wasn't true, but Jake believed her and broke up with me in front of the entire school. That was a misunderstanding, Mia began. When I was accepted to my dream college, I continued, ignoring her. Mia called the admissions office, pretending to be me, and canceled my enrollment. She said I had decided to take a gap year to find myself. I heard several people whisper, "What?" at the same time. When I got the internship at the architecture magazine, Mia showed up at their office and told them I was going through mental health problems and might not be reliable. They withdrew the offer. I was worried about you, Mia tried to defend herself. And when I finally found someone I truly loved, I said, my voice starting to tremble, someone who wanted to marry me and build a life with me, you slept with him 3 weeks before our wedding. The silence on the porch was deafening. So, yes, I continued, looking directly at Mia. Maybe I kissed Marcus on purpose. Maybe I wanted you to feel a fraction of the pain you've caused me over the years. And you know what? I don't feel bad about it at all. Mia was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of pure rage. You're a liar, she screamed. You're making all of this up. Am I? I asked calmly. I took my phone out of my pocket. Because I have the messages you sent to Ryan. Want me to read them to everyone? Mia's face went white. Or would you prefer I show the screenshots of the conversations where you tell your friends how easy it is to manipulate committed men? My father approached. What's happening here? Can someone explain this to me properly? I can, said my Aunt Sarah, my mother's older sister, who had always been known for speaking truths no one wanted to hear. From what I understand, Mia has a pattern of sabotaging family relationships. And finally, someone did to her what she always did to others. Aunt Sarah, my mother began. No, Linda, Aunt Sarah said firmly. I've seen this happen for years. Remember when she told everyone that cousin Carla was cheating on her fiancé at the bachelorette party when Carla wasn't even there? That was a misunderstanding, my mother said weakly. And when she accidentally dropped Julia's ring down the drain before the wedding? And the Jessica story? And now Ryan? Aunt Sarah shook her head. Linda, at some point, you need to stop turning a blind eye. My cousin Daniel, who had been Ryan's classmate in college, spoke for the first time. To tell the truth, Ryan told me his version of the story about 2 months ago. He said Mia showed up at his house, saying you had asked her to check if he was really working late, like you were suspicious and wanted to be sure before the wedding. All heads turned to Mia, who was getting redder and redder. And when he said that was strange because you two talked every day and you never mentioned being suspicious, Daniel continued, she said you asked him not to mention it, that it was just so you could be sure, that you didn't want to seem controlling. That's not true, Mia said quickly. He showed me her messages, Daniel said simply. All timestamped and documented. My mother looked at Mia with an expression I had never seen before. Mia, is this true? I was just trying to protect her, Mia stammered. Ryan wasn't good. She deserved to know. By lying to him about what I had asked you to do. I asked. How was that protecting me? You never would have found out who he really was if I hadn't. He didn't do anything. I exploded. You showed up at his house with a made-up story, threw yourself at him when he was confused and drunk, and then made it seem like it was his idea. It wasn't like that, was it? Then I'll read the message you sent to your friend Kelly that same night. I grabbed my phone and scrolled until I found what I was looking for. I cleared my throat and began to read, mission accomplished. My sister's fiancé is easier to break than I thought. Some strategic lies, a little alcohol, and voila. She'll thank me later for saving her from a horrible marriage. The silence that followed was absolute. And here's another one, I continued, scrolling down. Honestly, I don't know why I feel bad. It's not like she was really happy with him. She was just settling because she was getting old and desperate. Mia was shaking her head vigorously. And one more, I said, finding the message that had hurt me the most. The best part is that now she'll be single again, so she won't think she's better than me anymore. Single sisters are much more fun than married sisters. My mother covered her mouth with her hands. My father looked like he had been hit by a truck. Mia, my mother said in a low voice. Tell me this isn't true. Mom, I can explain then, shouted my uncle Roberto, my father's younger brother, who had always had an explosive temper. Explain how you destroyed your sister's life on purpose. I didn't destroy anything. Mia cried. I saved her. You don't understand what Ryan was really like. What was he really like? I asked. You spent exactly 3 hours with him before deciding he was no good, 3 hours in 2 years of relationship. I knew by the way he looked at me. For God's sake, Mia, exploded Aunt Sarah. Not every man who looks at you wants something. Sometimes they're just being polite. That's not true. Yes, it is, said Marcus, speaking for the first time since he had admitted he broke up with her. Mia, you interpreted every normal conversation we had as if it were something more. Every time I was polite, you thought I was flirting. Every time I laughed at your jokes, you thought I was falling in love. You were, she insisted. You said I was special. I said you were an interesting person, Marcus corrected, which is very different. You don't understand, Mia said, turning to the family as if expecting support. You don't know what it's like to be me, always in her shadow, always being compared. Compared? I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Mia, since we were born, Mom and Dad have told me to be patient with you, to let you win, not to compete. You've never been in my shadow because I never tried to cast a shadow. That's not true, is it? She shouted. How many times did I let you win games because you threw tantrums when you lost? How many times did I say you were right when you were obviously wrong because it was easier than dealing with your attacks? How many times did I give up things I wanted because you wanted them more? I looked around at my family, all the people who had spent years asking me to understand Mia, to be the understanding older sister. And the first time in my life that I do something I want, something that makes me happy, she acts like I've committed the greatest crime in history. Because you did. Mia shouted. You stole the love of my life. The love of your life? I exploded. Mia, you dated for 2 months, 2 months. And most of the time, you were complaining that he was distant because he was confused about his feelings. No, Marcus said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I wasn't confused. I knew exactly how I felt. I wasn't in love with you, Mia. I never was. The sound that came from Mia's throat was almost animal-like. Why did you start dating me then? She asked with a broken voice. Marcus sighed deeply. Because you were persistent. And I thought maybe the feelings would come with time, but they never did. And now you're in love with her? Mia asked, pointing at me. Marcus looked at me, and for a moment, the whole world seemed to stop. Yes, he said simply. I am. Mia collapsed, literally falling to the porch floor, sobbing in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. My mother ran to console her, but Mia pushed her away. You're all against me, she screamed from the floor. My own family is choosing her over me. Nobody is choosing sides, my father said calmly. But Mia, the things you've done, they have consequences. What consequences? I never hurt anyone on purpose. Mia, said my cousin Julia, who had been quiet until now. You told my ex-husband I was having an affair 3 days before our reconciliation. Because you were. I wasn't. Julia shouted. I was doing couples therapy with a man who happened to be the therapist. You saw a photo of me leaving an office with a man and invented an entire story. I thought, you didn't think, Aunt Sarah said firmly. You wanted to cause drama. And when you spread to half the city that I had lost my job, my cousin Andre added, when I had just changed offices, you knew that, but you thought it would be more interesting to tell it like I had been fired. That was a misunderstanding. And when you told my girlfriend that I had made comments about other women, Daniel continued, when I had only said I thought the new employee was competent at work. One by one, person after person from our family began telling stories about how Mia had caused problems in their lives, small lies, exaggerated gossip, accidental misunderstandings that always caused maximum drama. Mia became smaller and smaller on the floor, realizing that her support network was evaporating before her eyes. You're all against me, she repeated, but now her voice was weaker. No, said my mother calmly, sitting on the floor next to her. We love you, Mia. But loving someone doesn't mean ignoring when that person is hurting other people. I never hurt anyone on purpose, Mia insisted, but now it sounded like a child repeating a lie she didn't even believe anymore. Maybe not consciously, my mother said gently. But impact matters more than intention, dear. Mia looked around at the entire family, searching for at least one person who was on her side. She found none. Finally, she stood up slowly. Fine, she said, wiping her face. I get it. You chose her, as always. Mia, my father began. No, she said, raising her hand. It's all clear now. I never had a chance in this family anyway. She turned to me, and for a moment, I saw something that looked almost like respect, or maybe recognition. "You won," she said simply. "Congratulations." And then she left, leaving the entire family on the porch in absolute silence. Chapter 4. After Mia left, my parents' wedding anniversary party obviously ended. People started saying goodbye in small groups, whispering among themselves about the drama they had just witnessed. Some offered me words of support, others seemed not to know what to say. Marcus stayed, helping to clean up while my parents processed everything that had happened. "You can go home," my mother said after a while, looking exhausted. "Your father and I need to talk about some things." In the parking lot, Marcus and I stood by our cars, neither of us knowing quite what to say. "That was," he began. "Intense," I finished. "Sorry you had to see all that." "Don't apologize. I'm glad it all finally came out." He paused for a moment. "Are you okay?" It was a simple question, but one that made me stop to really think. Was I okay? I had just confronted my sister in front of the entire family, exposed years of manipulation and lies, and potentially destroyed any chance of future reconciliation. And yet, for the first time in months, I felt light. "You know what?" I replied honestly. "I think I am. For the first time in a long time, I am." Marcus smiled. "Can I take you to dinner tomorrow?" "For real this time, not as part of any plan or strategy, just because I want to." "I'd love that." That night, alone at home, I tried to process everything that had happened. My phone rang several times, messages from cousins and uncles offering support, some questions about details I had mentioned, and a long message from Aunt Sarah saying she was proud of me for finally standing up for myself. There were no messages from Mia. Dinner with Marcus the next day was completely different from our first coffee. No subterfuge, no tension about doing something wrong, just two adults who had been through something intense together and wanted to get to know each other better. "Can I ask you something?" he said while we shared dessert. "When did you decide to do what you did with Mia and me?" I thought carefully before answering. "Honestly, I think it was at that first coffee, when you said you felt guilty for not feeling the same way she felt. I realized that you two were trapped in a situation that wasn't healthy for anyone." "And you decided to intervene?" "I decided to do to her what she always did to me," I corrected. "The difference is that you really wanted to get out of that situation." "And if I hadn't wanted to?" "Then I would have found that out and stopped," I replied without hesitation. "I'm not Mia. I don't force situations where I'm not welcome." We spent the next 3 hours talking about everything: our families, our jobs, our dreams, our disappointments. It was the first time in years that I felt completely comfortable with someone without fear of judgment or manipulation. When he walked me to my car, he asked, "Do you regret it?" "Everything that happened?" "No," I replied without hesitation. "Do you?" "Not at all." He kissed me then, a kiss different from the one on my parents' porch. That one had been impulsive, loaded with tension and revenge. This one was gentle, promising, full of possibilities. During the following weeks, Marcus and I started dating for real. We went to movies, had dinner out, spent weekends exploring mountain trails nearby. It was surprisingly easy to be with him. Conversations flowed naturally, we had enough interests in common to never run out of topics but enough differences to keep things interesting. More importantly, it was the first time I was with someone who saw me as I really was, not as an edited version of myself. With Ryan, I had always felt like I was performing the role of the perfect girlfriend. With Marcus, I could simply be myself. Mia, meanwhile, had practically disappeared. She didn't show up for Sunday lunches at my parents' house, didn't respond to family messages, and had stopped posting on social media. My mother was worried but respected it when Mia said she needed space to process. "She'll be fine," my father told me during one of our weekly coffee meetings, a tradition we had started after the drama. "Mia has always been resilient. Maybe this is what she needed to finally make some changes." I wasn't so sure. I knew Mia well enough to know that she didn't see this as an opportunity for growth. For her, this was a total betrayal by the family she thought would always be on her side, no matter what she did. The confirmation came 6 weeks later when my cousin Julia called me on a Tuesday night. "Have you seen Mia's Instagram?" she asked without preamble. "No." "Why?" "You need to see this." I opened Instagram for the first time in weeks and went straight to Mia's profile. The first thing I noticed was that she had blocked me. The second was that she had posted a series of stories about overcoming family toxicity. "Julia, I can't see it." "She blocked me." "Wait, I'll screenshot and send them to you." The screenshots arrived within minutes. Mia had posted a series of long texts about narcissistic sisters and families that choose sides. There were quotes about cutting toxic people from your life and prioritizing your mental peace. But what caught my attention most was the last post: "Sometimes the people who should protect you most are the ones who hurt you most." I learned that blood doesn't mean loyalty and that sometimes you need to create your own family. For everyone who asked where I've been, I'm healing from abusive relationships and redefining my life. Thank you to everyone who supported me during this difficult time. #HealingJourney, #ToxicFamily, #ChooseYourself. "She's telling everyone we're abusive," I said to Julia. "It gets worse. Look at the comments. I scrolled through the comments and saw that Mia was responding to questions with vague statements about years of emotional manipulation and always being the family scapegoat. Some people who didn't know us well were offering support, saying things like, "You deserve better," and "Toxic families are the worst." "What do I do?" I asked Julia. "Nothing," she replied firmly. "Anyone who knows both of you knows exactly what the truth is. And the people who don't know, well, their opinion doesn't matter anyway." But it was easier said than done. During the following weeks, I heard rumors about the stories Mia was spreading, that I had always been jealous of her, that I had stolen all her boyfriends over the years, that our family always favored me, that she was the victim of a dysfunctional family dynamic where she never had a chance. The irony was that, in a way, Mia was finally doing what I had always hoped she would do, removing herself from situations that made her unhappy. The problem was that instead of taking responsibility for her part in the problems, she was rewriting the entire story to make herself the victim. "She's always been like this," Marcus told me one night when I was particularly frustrated after discovering that Mia had told mutual acquaintances that I always tried to compete with her. "People like Mia can't function without a villain in their story. If it weren't you, it would be someone else." "But they're all lies," I said, "or, at minimum, completely distorted versions of the truth. And anyone who cares about you knows that," he replied, pulling me close. "The rest doesn't matter." Gradually, I began to realize that Marcus was right. The people who really knew me, my family, true friends, work colleagues, knew what the truth was. And the people who believed Mia's stories without questioning probably weren't people I wanted in my life anyway. More importantly, for the first time in my adult life, I was in a situation where Mia's actions couldn't affect me directly. She could no longer sabotage my relationships because I had completely distanced myself from her. She could no longer create drama at family events because she had excluded herself. She could no longer use our family as an audience for her manipulations because everyone had finally seen her true behavior. It was liberating in a way I didn't expect. Chapter 5. 3 months after the explosion at my parents' party, Marcus and I were getting more and more serious. We had started seeing each other almost every day. I had a drawer at his place, and he had met my closest friends. It was the kind of relationship I had always dreamed of, stable, respectful, full of laughter and genuine conversations. It was on a Friday night, when we were making dinner together in his kitchen, that he brought up the subject we were both avoiding. "Have you been thinking about Mia?" he asked, chopping vegetables for the salad. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Why?" "Just. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if we did the right thing." I stopped stirring the risotto and turned to him. "Do you regret it?" "No," he said quickly. "I definitely don't regret being with you. I could never regret that." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But sometimes I wonder if there was a better way to handle everything." It was a fair question, one I had considered many times in recent weeks. "Do you think if you had simply broken up with her first and then we got involved, it would have been different?" "Maybe. Or maybe she would have reacted exactly the same way," he sighed. "It's impossible to know." "Marcus," I said, approaching him and putting my hand on his face, "I understand the guilt. I really do. But you need to remember that Mia made choices too. She chose not to accept when you said you needed time. She chose to interpret your politeness as romantic interest. She chose to create a relationship in her head that didn't exist in reality." "I know," he said, covering my hand with his. "It's just that sometimes I feel like we could have been kinder." "Kinder than what?" "Than years of our family's attempts to talk to her about her behavior? Then dozens of destroyed relationships that everyone simply ignored? Then me spending my entire life being the understanding sister?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You're right. It's just, she seemed so destroyed." "She was destroyed," I agreed, "but not because of us. She was destroyed because she finally had to face the consequences of her own actions." We returned to cooking in silence, but I could feel that we were both thinking about the same thing, whether we had been too cruel, whether there was a version of this story where everyone came out unscathed. The answer came 2 weeks later in a way neither of us expected. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I received a call from my mother. Her voice sounded strange, not exactly worried, but confused. "Can you come over?" she asked. "There's something I need to show you." When I arrived at my parents' house, I found my mother and father sitting at the kitchen table with a pile of papers between them. "What is this?" I asked, sitting down. "Letters," my father said simply. "From Mia to people she hurt." I looked closer and saw they were handwritten letters, several pages each, with different names on the envelopes: Jessica, the ex-best friend, Julia, our cousin, Ryan, my ex-fiancé, even Marcus. "She brought these this morning," my mother explained. "She said she was in therapy and that her therapist suggested she write apology letters to all the people she hurt. She's not going to send all of them, some are just for her process, but she wanted us to see them." "And?" I asked cautiously. She took responsibility?" "She did," my father said, sounding surprised. "For everything. No excuses, no justifications, no trying to minimize." My mother pushed one of the letters in my direction. "This one is for you." With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and began to read. Dear sister, I know this letter probably comes too late, and I know you have every right not to want to read it. But my therapist says it's important that I take full responsibility for my actions, even if it doesn't change anything between us. I destroyed your wedding with Ryan on purpose. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't because I was confused or going through a hard time. It was because I couldn't stand to see you happy in a way I never managed to be. I invented the story about you being suspicious of him because I knew it would create the opportunity one needed. And when he was vulnerable, I took advantage. I also sabotaged your other relationships over the years, Jake Morrison, that internship at the magazine, even your college enrollment. Whenever you were achieving something I wanted for myself, I found a way to ruin it. I convinced myself I was protecting you or that you didn't deserve these things more than me, but the truth is, I simply couldn't stand not being the center of attention. I know you did to Marcus what I always did to you. And I know it was intentional. And you know what? You were right. I needed to feel what it was like to be on the other side. I needed to understand what it was like to have someone you care about taken from you through manipulation and lies. The difference is that you did it once, as a lesson. I did it repeatedly for years because I was envious and selfish. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm working to be a better person. I'm in therapy, taking medication for anxiety and depression. And for the first time in my life, I'm trying to understand why I did these things instead of just finding excuses. You were always the sister I wanted to be, kind, talented, loved by people. Instead of trying to be like you, I tried to bring you down to my level. That was cruel and unfair, and you didn't deserve it. I hope you're happy with Marcus. From the little I knew him, he seems to be a good person, and you make sense together in a way we never did. I'm genuinely happy that you found someone who sees you as you deserve to be seen. I love you, and I'm sorry for everything, Mia. When I finished reading, there were tears in my eyes, not tears of sadness exactly, but of relief, of closure. She brought this personally? I asked. She did, my mother confirmed. She only stayed a few minutes. She said she didn't expect it to change anything, but that she needed to do her part to try to repair the damage she caused. How did she seem? Different, my father said thoughtfully. More quiet, more mature, maybe. She lost weight and seemed tired, but not in a bad way, like she was finally sleeping properly. We spent the next hour talking about the letters, about what this meant, about whether we believed Mia's change was genuine or just another manipulation. In the end, we concluded that there was no way to know for sure, but the fact that she wasn't expecting anything in return, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, not even a response, was a good sign. That night, I showed the letter to Marcus. He read it in silence, his expression changing as he processed each paragraph. How do you feel about this? He asked when he finished. I don't know, I admitted honestly. Part of me wants to believe she's really changed. Another part is waiting for this to just be another one of her strategies. And if it's genuine? Then maybe someday we can have some kind of relationship again, not like before, never like before, but maybe something functional. And if it's not, then at least I know I did my part. That when she was ready to take responsibility, I was willing to listen. Marcus pulled me close. You're a better person than I would be in this situation. I don't know about that, I said, but I know I don't want to spend the rest of my life carrying anger, not for her, for me. I put the letter in a drawer at my desk and tried not to think too much about it in the following weeks. Marcus and I continued our normal life, work, dinners, weekends together. He had started talking about us moving in together, and as terrifying as the idea was after everything that had happened with Ryan, I was starting to seriously consider it. It was 3 months after the letter that I saw Mia for the first time since my parents' party. I was at the grocery store, shopping for dinner, when I saw her in the organic produce aisle. She was thin, thinner than I remembered, and her hair was shorter in a cut that made her look more mature. She was dressed simply, without the dramatic makeup she used to wear, and seemed to be really focused on her shopping list. For a moment, I considered pretending I hadn't seen her and quietly leaving through the other side of the store. But something made me walk toward her. Hi, Mia, I said quietly. She looked up from her list, and for a second, she seemed like a frightened animal. Then her face calmed into an expression I didn't recognize, not exactly peace, but something close to it. Hi, she replied. How are you? Good. And you? Better, she said, and it seemed genuine. Different, but better. We stood in silence for a moment, two sisters who had once been close, now strangers in a grocery store aisle. I got your letter, I said finally. I figured you did. Mom said you all talked about it. It was unexpected. Mia gave a small, sad smile. My therapist said it would be the hardest part of the whole process, admitting exactly what I had done without excuses. And how was it to write? Horrible, she admitted, but necessary. I had never really thought about how my actions affected other people. I was always too focused on how I felt, on how I was being wronged. More silence. Then she asked, how are things with Marcus? Good, I replied carefully. Very good. I'm glad, she said, and to my surprise, she seemed sincere. You make sense together. I always knew you did, even when I was pretending I didn't see it. Mia, no, she interrupted gently. I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty or to try to manipulate something. I'm saying it because it's true. You talk in a way that Marcus and I never could. You complement each other. Thank you, I said, not knowing what else to say. And I want you to know, she continued, that I understand why you did what you did. I'm not happy about it, obviously, but I understand. And if I were in your place, after everything I did to you over the years, I probably would have done the same thing. That doesn't make it right, I said. No, she agreed. But it also doesn't make you a bad person, just human. A woman passed by us with her cart, reminding us we were having this conversation in the middle of a grocery store. I should go, Mia said. But it was good to see you. Really? For me, too, I replied and realized I was being honest. She started to walk away, then turned back. Can I ask you something? Sure. Could you forgive me someday? Not now, I know it's too early, but maybe eventually? The question caught me by surprise. I thought carefully before answering. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm trying. And that's already more than I thought would be possible a few months ago. She nodded, as if that was more than she expected. It's enough, she said. More than enough. And then she really left, leaving me alone among the organic fruits, processing a conversation I never imagined we would have. That night, I told Marcus about the encounter. How do you feel? He asked, the question that was becoming our standard way of processing anything related to Mia. Hopeful, I replied after thinking. For the first time in, well, maybe since childhood, I feel like maybe there's a version of the future where Mia and I can coexist without constant drama. Would that be good? It would, I said, realizing it was true. It wouldn't be like before, and maybe we'll never be close again. But it would be peaceful. Marcus kissed my forehead. You deserve peace. We deserve it, I corrected. All of us. 6 months later, Marcus and I moved in together. A year after that, he proposed to me on a mountain trail, in the same place where we had our first really honest conversation about our families and our pasts. Mia wasn't at our wedding, but she sent a card. Inside, there was only one line: I wish all the happiness in the world for both of you. It was signed simply, Mia, without drama, without subtext, without trying to make it about her. It was perfect. Today, 3 years later, Marcus and I have a life I never thought would be possible. We live in a house we designed together, work on projects that excite us, and have the kind of stable and respectful relationship I always dreamed of but never knew if it really existed. Mia and I speak occasionally, birthday texts, congratulations for work promotions, condolences when our grandmother passed away. She's still in therapy, still working on herself. She started dating someone new recently, a man she met in a therapy group, and from what our mother tells me, it's a healthy and stable relationship. We'll never be as close as we were when we were children. There's too much water under the bridge, too much pain caused on both sides. But we've reached a place of mutual peace, of cautious respect, of love from a distance. And sometimes, that's enough. Sometimes, that's all you can ask for. The revenge I planned against Mia started as a way to make her feel the pain she always caused others. But in the end, it became something much bigger. It became a lesson for all of us about consequences, responsibility, and the possibility of real change. Mia learned that her actions have impact, that manipulation isn't love, and that she needed to stop seeing herself as a victim to start healing. I learned that sometimes you need to fight for your own happiness, even when it means hurting someone you love. I learned that family loyalty doesn't mean accepting abuse and that setting boundaries isn't cruelty. And Marcus learned that sometimes the best things in life come from the most complicated situations and that true love can be born even from a well-planned revenge. In the end, we all came out of this situation as better people, different, but better. And that, I think, is the best revenge of all.